are doing now. And I've been personally been a part of all the three programs so far. It has come out so beautifully, and the feedback what you got has been enormously positive. So I welcome you all for this wonderful session on workforce digital transformation, and I request Sri Vishal Nanavati to do his opening remarks, please. Over to Vishal, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kamath. Just to check, am I audible clearly?
Yes.
All right. Okay. Wonderful. So good evening to all of you. I think so. It's always been a privilege to be working with FICCI on this initiatives of running series of topics around transformation. Today's another important one. We've done topics by now on supply chain transformation, on finance, on front office transformation, and today we are going to deal with workforce transformation, right? Now, friends, when an organization initiates its journey around transformation, it could be all encompassing, right? We all have witnessed that it could be aiming for growth and enhance the brand value, keeping customer centricity at the core. It may also look at cost optimization initiatives, either through supply chain efficiencies or large-scale finance transformation initiatives. Most of these initiatives around transformation could also be supported through ERP implementation, right, which will help in extracting the relevant data on real-time basis and help generate the insights. But the transformation projects, friends, are capable to achieve its intended outcome, and this is in my personal experience, right? Only and only if workforce-related transformation is run in parallel to any other growth-led or cost-led or technology-led initiatives. Projects, which are truly transformational in nature, they require cultural changes in an organization, and most organizations do not really see the return on their investments coming through for one single sole reason, that their employees have yet not embraced the strategy which is laid out by the leadership in the way it was expected to be. Now, that could be, there are various reasons, right? That could be due to lack of clear communication to the staff. It could be that the gap in the skill sets have yet not been filled up for a long period of time. It could be the workforce policies may not have been shaped up to provide the different varied exposure and experience that the younger generation would demand for in today's times. It could be lack of skilling, reskilling, upskilling programs, etc., etc., etc. So along with the business leaders, the CHROs are increasingly becoming an important contributor, and that is what as PWC we've been witnessing a lot. They are important contributor to the success of any sort of such transformational change that an organization would venture upon. Now, what are the critical functions that we are seeing for a CHRO, right? Identification of the gaps in the skill set, extremely important function. Redefining the roles and responsibilities of the CXOs today. Retention of the talent in the times when all of us are experiencing the great resignation, right? This is a new term that is coined during the COVID times. And one more important function is also to help them embrace the cultural change. Now, this is all extremely important for a CHRO in today's times. But the bottom line is investment in the right capabilities. That is the need of the hour, keeping the digital skilling at the core. Now, as if we move forward, you would agree that the times are challenging for many organizations, and the problems that they are facing are unique. They're also equally complex at the same time. No perfect answer, to resolve through these challenges. But as leaders, today, all of us, when we are faced through, if I may use the term leadership paradoxes, what is important for our stakeholders to see is how, as leaders, we are helping drive the business outcomes. So today, friends, I don't want to steal away the thunder. We've got an experienced panel with us today who are going to share their own experience in terms of challenges that their businesses are facing. How, as true leaders, have they helped their own organizations achieve the business outcomes? But before we get into the panel discussions, I would invite my colleague Anumeha from PWC, who would present us, some snippets around the workforce transformation, what solutions have been implemented, what are possible to be implemented, keeping again the digital skilling at the core. With that, I'll hand over to you, Anumeha.
Thank you, Vishal. Thanks a lot. May I just request someone from FICCI to bring up the PowerPoint? So, while the PPT is coming in, I think Vishal has set the tone for this conversation pretty well. And Vishal highlighted, I think at the center of each digital transformation or even org transformation that we are experiencing with our clients, I think the people or the workforce is at the center of it. And a huge amount of, the success or the failure hinges on this particular pivot, as we look at it. Now, the topic of today, which is the HR and workforce transformation, is very interesting we have been talking about it for the last 5 years or maybe a little more, but in the last 24 odd months this has gained significant prominence, and we all know why, right? I mean, like, if we were leading businesses, if we were managing people, or even planning for our workforce, we have experienced disruptions of various orders, which is not only limited to people, but the geopolitical social crisis, and we were amidst the one of the largest public health emergency probably we experienced in our living memory, right? And as we were doing this, all of you also had to at the same time spend inordinate amount of energy in terms of redesigning your work environment, your work experience, trying to kind of ensure that your people are able to the most recent phenomenon of the resignation. And while doing all of this, I think keeping people safe, keeping their well-being at the center were of paramount importance. So when we look at the transformation as an agenda, and when we talk about customer, or as we call it, a front office transformation, I think there is no confusion on who the transformation is pivoted around, right? It's the customer, it's the customer's experience, their wants, their needs, and that entire thing kind of becomes the centerpiece of it. Likewise, when we talk about, let's say, a supply chain transformation, we are clearly aware about the pivot. I think when we speak about the workforce transformation, the jury is still out there, and many instances we have seen wherein the transformation is still pivoted a lot around the business, which is not a wrong idea, but again, an important actor is missing sometimes, which is the employee. Now, recently we did this survey, and if we can move on to the next slide, please. Which is the hopes. We do this survey for the last 4 years now, which is the hopes and fears survey. And this hopes and fears survey, it tries to kind of bring in how the workforce is feeling, how the workforce is thinking, and how the workforce is experiencing the entire labor market. This is a starting point of the transformation journey, and a very important piece to understand. Now, there were 5 themes that emerged in the survey that we did this year, and this is a global survey with a significant participation from India as well. And the reports were out last week only, so very timely to kind of discuss at this forum as well. First and foremost was that the whole employee-employer contract has changed in a big way, and the workers are feeling a lot more empowered, especially the skilled workers who have scarce skills which are in demand in the market, right? They are feeling a lot more empowered. And what does it mean for the organizations? As they are trying to go out and hunt for the right kind of talent, it's going to be extremely and more difficult. In fact, unlike last let's say 4 years back, they are also more open about asking for a raise, or let's say a promotion, and that is coming on back of 2 things: specialization and scarcity. So that's one big finding that came out. The second one is the money part remains important, but at the same time, the workforce is also seeking meaning. How do they align their individual purpose to the organization's purpose? And how are they able to bring in their authentic self as they kind of, come to the workplaces? That's the second thing. The third big finding was, and again, this is aligned to the hybrid workforce discussion that has been happening. Now, if we go back, let's say 4 or 5 months into the pandemic, there was a lot of discussion which was happening saying that a large part of workforce is going to be working remotely, and there were a lot of speculations around how there will be 100% remote working model, and that was the pivot. But we saw that in the last 6 to 8 months, that has kind of somewhere regained equilibrium, and we have arrived at a point wherein we are saying it is going to be hybrid. Now, as we talk about the hybrid work model, 2 important aspects that the workforce is seeking: one is inclusion, and the second thing is flexibility to make this entire thing work. Now, inclusion from the perspective of not only the people who will be working from anywhere, but also people who are coming to office. And in fact, an interesting finding of this survey was that people who are coming to office because of the essential work that they are doing more often are somewhere feeling less empowered, because they feel that, in this entire hybrid work equation, the empowerment that they have from a decision-making perspective is a lot less. So it is an important, again, consideration as we design the transformation agenda for the future. And the balance too, if we look into it, the fourth one was around, and again, very important consideration for all of us to look into how our workforce is. And if I may request, the slide to be moved, please. Yeah, thanks. The technology is going to be an important factor. Now, last year also this had come out in our survey, but people are perceiving it both as a threat as well as an opportunity. And surprisingly, the younger workforce is seeing it more as a threat, because of the awareness that they have about technology and the power of the technology that they understand. And hence the employees are seeking more proactively from the organization the upskilling that they need. And they're concerned that if that upskilling is not happening by their employers, then their relevance in the workforce is going to go down significantly. The fifth one, which is a new phenomena we have seen in the last 4-5 years. I think if we look at 10 years back, I don't think that the workforce was demanding so much of transparency around social issues, around organizations' participation in climate change. But these things are becoming extremely important, and the employees want their employers and the organizations to take a clear stance and also share with them what they are doing. And a lot of times when you're taking a decision to join or not to join an organization, this becomes an important factor. Now, when we look at these 5 big themes that are emerging for us, what does it mean for the C-suite? And I'm not going to tell you something which is new and we haven't heard about. First one is workforce is the number one enabler as well as risk. And the second thing is technology being the integrator. Now, we all know at a cognitive level that these two things have been important for a while, but the amount of importance that this needs to gain at an execution level is going to be significant in the coming months. And that is going to be the differentiator for the organizations who are able to embrace these changes, deep dive into these 5 aspects or maybe more for their organizations, and the ones who may not be able to. The kind of diverse expectations that we are seeing from the employees, the kind of diverse needs that we are seeing from the employee, technology is going to be the single most factor to bring this experience together, especially when we are talking about a huge distributed workforce. When we look at that, how this is now technology is panning out, and if we move on, I think there is an important aspect to be considered over here, that the technology that we are looking at today and the technology that employees are experiencing and the view that they have on technology is slightly different. So if we can move to the next slide. Thanks. So, us, and again, just want to share one data point over here. There is another survey that we had done on digital HR transformation survey to understand the view of the C-suite versus the view of the employee. Interestingly, 90% of the C-suite believe that as they are designing and as they are looking into, deciding on their technology, on their process aspects, they are considering people needs at the center of it. Whereas only 53% of the employees agree to this. So there is a huge dissonance out there. And then we get into the layers of dissonance in terms of effectiveness, in terms of how this is coming to life, it kind of, becomes further stark. Now let's try and understand why this may be happening, right? Because ultimately the C-suite believes that all the investment, all the thinking that needs to go into creating this experience is happening out there. Now, I'll share some interesting information here to maybe probably uncover this, dissonance. There is an identity management company in the US, and they conducted a study of their customers to understand the various employee systems that they're using. And what they found was very, very interesting. The large organizations have on an average 100 to 120 employee systems at any given point in time. Now let's see what we are talking about here. All these employees are expected to interface with these 100, 120 odd systems. They're expected to kind of understand these systems and also use and adopt to these. Now, this is where the both ROI and experience quotient is going for a toss, because many of these systems are never being used by the employee and there has been investment which has already been made. And the second thing is it's also impacting the employee experience in a very adverse manner. So really what needs to be done, right? I mean, like at the face of it, either we simplify the decision that we are making around the technology choices that we are doing, or we put an interface to it. And all of this can happen when experience, the people experience or the employee experience kind of, comes to the center of it. So if we move on to the next slide. Now, how do we bring all this multitude of asks that we are talking about to create that meaningful work for the employee together? Unlike, when we were making choices around technology, when we were driving a digital transformation exercise wherein technology or process was the core driver, I think employees becoming the core driver over here. And two important considerations that needs to be done. One is the moments that matter for the employee, both at a professional level and the personal level, is going to be a significant aspect to be built into the design around workforce experience, around the technology experience, the whole organization ecosystem experience that they are having, and most importantly, the culture that they are going to experience in a distributed workforce model. Now, one would ask that how do we do this? Because we have so many different kinds of employees. Some organizations have these employees spread across different geographies, different places. They come from different background. You have a multi-dimensional and a diverse workforce. So here we have to draw the parallel on what's happening on the customer experience front, right? When we look at customer, we are talking about creating one singular view of each customer. And that is probably the view that increasingly is coming into the world of employee as well. And that is the view we need to kind of create for these employees. We have so many social listening skills that gets deployed, on the customer side of it. So how are we kind of listening to our employees? How are we, deploying those listening skills to be able to create this experience is going to be, again, a very, very important factor, which will define how customer experience will play back and to the brand that we are building, because employee experience is going to be at the center of what gets delivered to our customer. And increasingly, as most organizations, even if they are a product organization, service is going to be a paramount, and platform is going to be a paramount factor in delivering their products, right? And as we see, most of the organizations, even if they're only making products, the service, the whole bundling is happening, and the customer is not seeing it as a product, but rather a service. And that service is getting delivered on back of the employee that we are talking about. So that's an important factor when we are looking at the workforce transformation, right? And the whole crystal gazing into workforce transformation, there are multitude of aspects that, one could talk about, but probably the employee experience and the whole design of digital and the technology around that experience is going to be at the center of it. Now, if we look at, how this all kind of, plays out, and especially how when we, design these experiences, it could be kind of considered. And if we can move on to the next slide, please. Now, this is where the whole, practicality of what is being done on the ground comes to life. If we look at what's happening here, and the drivers of transformation in terms of productivity, efficiency, agility, all of this customer experience we have spoken about. When we look at the middle bucket, wherein we are talking about the designing the layer for experience in the organization, I think an important factor here is, rather than going from the process and the technology lens and then designing the experience is coming at the center, and everything else is revolving around it. And this is where all the functions, not only HR, and because the experience design is not an HR responsibility, it's actually a cross-functional area wherein the HR will have to partner closely with business to design the experience that we are talking about. And based on that experience, then we make the choice around the technology that we may want to use, the process that we kind of want to create, the delivery model that we want to kind of create for the employee, and so on and so forth. Now, if we look at the providers, especially from a tech and employee interface standpoint, and then we look at our own organizations, most of the providers would want to be at the front layer, right? So when I'm clicking onto, let's say, a Workday, and I'm just taking some examples over here, or let's say, a ServiceNow tool, anything, there will be an interface when the provider would want to be at the front layer of it. But that's where the decisions come in, that how do you define the employee experience layer first, so that the employee doesn't have to click on to those multiple things that's working in the backdrop. It's almost like saying that the employee who is experiencing these tools is also a customer, and the customer today is kind of be able to do a lot of things at the click of a button, and the same experience needs to kind of replicate it over here. Now, two important decisions hence organizations here will need to take. One, what is that experience layer that we want to create, and what's important for my employees? And the second thing is the technology choices, how much of the best of breed versus a singular model that we can kind of probably go with. And that decision, that choice becomes extremely important out here. So that's more from the whole experience design perspective. And then if we kind of talk about stitch it all together, there are two kinds of benefits that we are seeing. One is, of course, translating into very tangible, hard benefits in terms of increase in productivity, in terms of increase in operational efficiency, the reduction in costs, right? We spoke about earlier that how there are multiple technologies and platforms and tools which are kind of there in the organization but never used by the employees. So how do we kind of optimize that aspect and do what's the most optimal for the organization? And the second thing is the whole intangible benefits that we are talking about. Now, again, when employees are looking at this experience coming together, right, from the perspective of their work, their wellness, their interaction with their ecosystem within and outside the organization. They are not looking at some of the basic tools which are there from the past, like attendance, health management. All of this they are considering to be hygiene. The question that the employee is asking today: how will this technology, how will this transformation help me help me do my job better? And that's, I think, is going to be at the center of some of the transformation work that we are doing. Now, as we speak about all of this, I think an important player in the equation here is HR. And I think Vishal spoke about it earlier, that when we have to bring in all of this together, the role of HR is also changing significantly. And if we can move on to the next slide. Thanks. So again, when we looked at the same survey that I was talking about, there are two big expectations that the CEOs have from their HR function. One, when they are driving some of these digital transformations, one of the big thing which is not happening is the whole embedding of the right kind of mindset, right? So that the transformation that is happening in the organization is sustained. And HR is expected to play a big role over there. And the second thing is, how does HR play a significant role in designing that experience that we are talking about, so that this multitude of platform, so that the change that we are talking about in the organization, it all kind of comes together and sticks. And most importantly, as we are driving this transformation in the organization, the workforce is feeling upskilled and adequate to be able to kind of participate in the transformation journey and also contribute. And finally, looking at various roles that HR would need to play. In summary, if I were to kind of go on to the next slide. So 4 big areas that's coming from HR, and the expectation, the way it's shifting to be able to kind of drive the transformation and experience in the organization. One is, how are we able to understand our talent? How are we able to build that talent and nurture that talent in the organization? A huge flexibility is expected from the business, in terms of the way the transformation agendas are getting led. Core of being at the core of all the digital transformation that's happening, and not only transformation, but accelerating the transformation by upskilling the employees. And again, the most important one, being the cultural ambassador of the organization, to be able to cater to all those experiences that the employee is seeking, right from the purpose to the values, to connecting it with some of the agendas that the organization also has. So with that, we will get into the panel conversation in a bit. And I think we'll explore a little more from the practitioner's lens on how different organizations and how our esteemed panelists who are there today experiencing some of these things in terms of their challenges, in terms of their learnings, and in terms of their way forward. Right. So thank you so much. And over to you, Mr. Kamath.
Mr. Kamath, Anumeha, you have to carry on the panel discussion.
Sure. Thanks. Okay. No, I thought Mr. Kamath wanted to share something in between.
No, he has to board a flight to Mangalore. He just messaged me. He was from the airport. He was joining. Yeah. Yeah, you can carry on.
Maybe, we'll start with the conversation. And I think the very first question that I wanted to pose to our panelists today is, that when we look at all this backdrop that we just discussed, and, we have been having conversation on this, according to you, what is keeping you and your business leaders awake today? And how are you planning to deal with some of these issues? And probably we can go with Anil, Chavi, Deepak in order that, but let's listen to all of you in terms of how are you experiencing this phenomena?
Thank you. Thanks, Anumeha, and good afternoon, everyone. Really happy to be here. So happy to represent FIS Global, which is the world's largest global provider of payments, banking, and investment technology solutions. So since we're in the fintech space, what keeps our leaders and us awake is the way the world is transacting and moving money is changing by the day. Since it's always been the case, but at least last 2 to 3 years, it's been accelerating. And it's not just a function of digital transformation or what's happening in the world, but it's also about the macro and microeconomics and what's happening in the world particularly, right? So if I had to quickly sum it up, I think being extremely customer-centric to actually move the way our customers are moving, understanding them, empathizing with them, applying the whole, the CX, right? You're talking about experience, starting with customer experience itself. And just flipping it the other way around, there's so much, as you rightly mentioned, the social contract with our employees has changed so much in the last couple of years. So at the same time, as the expectations of customers are shifting drastically, so are also the expectations of the employees. So how do we sustain to be extremely customer-centric by also being employee-centric to keep winning every day is what keeps our leaders in HR awake every day. So thank you.
Shavi, over to you.
I think it almost seems logical that after fintech we speak about e-commerce, and I think just to share, I work with Flipkart. I think what keeps us awake, I think both as business and HR, are two things primarily. One is I think from an e-commerce industry perspective, I think to what Anil was saying, how do we the way the world is transacting and the way the world is exchanging, whether it's ideas or goods, it has shifted. I think big time over the last couple of years, and I think probably advanced much faster than we had expected it to. Also, the fact that I think it is becoming increasingly difficult to predict behavior, whether it is from a customer lens or from an employee lens. And I think I come from a space where I used to work for an organization called ITC, where we used to really panel market research agencies, and we used to make 5-year plans, to work, and they used to really work. We are talking about quarterly plans. We're talking about 6-month plans. And with that comes such a huge stress in terms of how do we strengthen, disrupt our presence in the market with the changing behavior and unpredictable behavior of the market. Two, and we took it from an employee lens as well. I think how do we create a safe space for people to disrupt and innovate? But given the fact that there is higher risk-taking behaviors that you're experiencing, and Umayya, to just what you share, that people who carry deep expertise in any area are willing to experiment a lot with their lives and careers than they were earlier. And there is I think it's becoming, the talent market is more active than I've ever experienced it to be. How do you transfer that heightened sense of risk-taking into an organizational context? Is what keeps me awake as an HR leader. I think, here is such a beautiful opportunity that people are willing to take bets on themselves. How do we convert that from individual identity to a collective identity? How can you shape the Flipkart of the future through that element of risk-taking, is what just keeps me awake, but also keeps me energized. That, how do we transfer that huge sense of, self to a collective identity and sense of purpose and belonging. So yeah, that's what we are struggling with and working with as well.
I think you made a very, very important point, Shavi, there in terms of the risk-taking ability of the employee and, harnessing it at a collective organizational level. And I think that is where the struggle lies today. And that's where we are also unable to figure out how do we keep these employees, with us for a longer tenure of time, wherein they can build institutions along with us, right? So moving on to maybe Deepak, Nitin, hearing your perspectives on this.
Yes, I mean, I am undergoing a transformation in my current role because I come from an organization where I worked previously in the Middle East, which was a global organization operating in 7 countries in the telecom space. And as Shavi mentioned, we were engaging consultants, looking at 5-year plans, driving change from the center to make it happen across the workforce of 60,000 across the world. And most of it was top driven. And it was dictated by the strategic plan that the organization had and communication, different formats. And it was a huge exercise of how to get. Creating agile teams was a challenge by itself because we wanted small teams to get into going and making it happen on the ground, etc. And cut that, I've come to a small and medium enterprise in India, in Hangyo, where the work culture is so different. They are already agile. There are small teams that are working already. They communicate very easily. They talk to people if they have a customer issue. They communicate the customer problem is heard by the management within maybe hours or minutes. And I look back and say, well, I need to think differently now. This is an organization which is already agile. Do I need to slow it down? It has its challenges. Yes, the pandemic is gone. They're very optimistic. They want to grow. The organization is now looking at, from a strategic point of view, that we need to accelerate our growth, forget what happened for the last 2 years, and we need to achieve what we are capable of. So there is a lot of optimism within the team. Now it's a small team. They are 500 employees, but they are spread around, and each one is probably a group of 20, 30, and they work so smoothly. So while I hear all this, I need to keep in mind in my current organization that we need to bring in change. We need to get into that growth track that the organization is focusing on and listen to our customers. Tongue of people requires different flavors. The market, the youth is requesting something else, the old people are doing, and therefore there is a very dynamic environment on which we operate. And getting the team to learn quickly, managing their expectation, because when I was looking at some of the attrition we had and we looked at good people, why they were leaving us, I was surprised. They were very fond of Hangyo, but they did not find a career growth and they were looking for higher career growth. So there are different nuances which are working around. And when I saw your slide, we said CX is equal to EX. I think it should have been the other way around. EX is equal to CX. So I think if we drive EX, the CX will come. And that is what I'm seeing in Hangyo. And that's the challenge which I would like to try and see how do I maintain that. Putting my employee first and then making sure that they take care of my customers automatically. Thank you.
So thanks, Deepak. Very well said. I think the whole experience quotient for the employee is going to be a central piece. And I think you spoke about agility also as a very important theme in terms of, something that you were doing as a 5-year plan. And Chavi also spoke about it, that, has been truncated to a quarterly or maybe a monthly and a, 6-monthly plan. So yeah, I take away that those two important things for myself here. Nitin, Chavi, Shamala.
Sure. So I think first I would like to clarify on the generalization. What is keeping us awake? If my leader is awake every night and my HR is awake every night, then I think all of them are in trouble. They should not be every night. Sometimes it's okay. So it is not every night sometimes. And the Great Recession, 42% people resigning and all, let's not generalize. Our attrition is about 2.8%. One of our biggest plant in Hisar has attrition of 0.8%. So not necessarily that every industry, every company has to go through the same thought process. If the companies have been working hard last 2 years, then they've already come on track. The problem we are talking about, that business changes and that market dynamics, customer needs, that started happening 2 years ago. Now we have realized that this is happening every month. We got to be ready every month to face a new challenge and manage it. The role of HR, I think, is two big things that I see as a change in role of HR. We were just settling down as an industry, coming up with the HRBP concept, coming up with shared service concept. But now it's different. Business needs more. Business is expecting that it is HR who will manage the change when we bring in the new technology. Plus, they will also advise my business leaders which technology to go for. And mostly my HR might not be really master of technology in those areas. And the second thing is that the business leaders and the managers are to be taught about talent management. There is no time that we scale up HR, get digitalized, make more investment, and everything will get managed. Talent management has to be managed by the business now, and HR has to teach them. And the third and important thing, things will change, disruptions will happen, and losses would occur. What is that I can do about it? What is not in our control? Maybe we might get, for example, we may get hit because of high dependency on import on raw materials. We're getting hit by the cost because of the war situation. We're losing money there. Maybe in other parts of the organization, having a lot of small innovations that is increasing our productivity, that is increasing our cost, and a number of other things is able to balance it out. So I think it is all about being able to partner with business. The HR role is to partner with business beyond that what we were doing so far. Go ahead, Anumaya.
Thanks, Nitin. I think thanks for sharing that alternate perspective. And I 100% agree with you that, some of these could be generalizations across industries. And the lens that we have to apply has to be very organization focused, because each organization has its own journey in the last 12 to 24 months specifically. And the another point I think you highlighted very important was that it also depends on how organizations have in fact dealt with the situation and the resilience they have showed in the last 24 months. That also defines that where are they today. And the third thing is, I think no organization today is talking about what to do and how to deal with pandemic, aftermaths of pandemic. Everyone is talking about the transformation agenda for the next 3 years, which is the good news. At least the transformation agenda is a long-term one, no matter if we are dealing with, quarterly or monthly plans. But yeah, thanks for sharing that alternate perspective and a paradox over here, which is, we'll soon deep dive into. So I'll request now maybe Ravi, you to share your perspectives, and after that, Shamala.
Sure. Firstly, thank you for having me here, and good evening to everybody. And see, if you see overall, there are a lot of dynamics in play over here. And if you see, we had pandemic on one side, then we have war situation on the second side, the inflation going up. If you see, last inflation rate was greater than 7%, which is 8 years high. But and great resignations, again, a coin term of the high attrition rates going on. A lot of things which are uncertainty, challenges which are there. But one thing which pandemic has certainly taught us is that while the challenges and uncertainties are there, it also is something which is leading to high amount of opportunities for us. And if you see, there was a huge amount of acceleration which happened in the digital transformation journey across the organizations because of pandemic. Because the pandemic came, business models had to be revamped, business models had to be fine-tuned, and you could see a good surge in the digital transformations across the organizations the people had taken. From the HR point of view, typically HR is driving all these processes, all these changes, whether it's led by the customer or it's led by the business model changes. HR is leading all of that today. And the significant amount from the HR today is to partner with the business, because HR business partnering becomes all the more important at this point of juncture, rather than we have been talking about it that HR becomes a business partner, but the need is quite high and significant now. And while I'm saying we have to be optimistic, we have to be positive, there are a lot of opportunities which will come in. And something which, as Jyoti, we say that we have a field force of around 5,000 people, which is direct and indirect put together. How do you drive these changes across the people, draw at any various levels across the organization? Pandemic, because of the lockdown, our field force could not go to the retail outlets to collect the order because of there was lockdown situations. How we dealt with it, it created an opportunity. We had a retailer app coming in where the retailer could directly punch in the orders and it will go to the stockist. Or we had orders collected on the phone. Even the app provided the orders collected on the phone. So anything which we do today is leading to some transformational journeys across the employees, which the HR is leading in a full-fledged way.
Thanks, Ravi. Shamala.
Thanks, Anumeha. And as I'm listening to the panel fellow members, I just feel that it's a little bit of everyone on the sentiments we've been going through. So I represent the CK Birla Group, which is a $3 billion US dollar Indian entity, 150 years of legacy. We have 10 different companies, very diversified businesses, right from making powertrains to ball bearings, to hospitals, to engineering schools, to women and child healthcare, so very diverse, ITES. Prior to this, I worked with a US multinational, 30 billion US dollar medical device, world biggest. I think if I have to drive one analogy, it's the business transformation. And we almost heard it from everyone. So that's something that remains common between all the organization. A lot of it has come from the pandemic. But even otherwise, I think the economic factors and the way, the workforce has been growing, the concept of millennials, Gen X, and all of that. I think what's keeping us awake is also, all our businesses are going through an aggressive business transformation. While we are profitable, but at the same time, new journeys, wanting to scale new heights. Nitin, I must say you are lucky. I mean, majority of our companies are manufacturing. It felt so much of respite to hear that someone in the world is still talking about 0.2% attrition. But it's really very high for us as well. Like in our hospitals, the nursing attrition is literally 100%. And we all have an appreciation of what the hospitals saw during the pandemic times. Plus, I think, so the digital transformation, obviously, which is not just bringing in technology, but it's all about a culture change, as some of us said, right? So it's all about new processes, integrating new ways of working. And I think last couple of years have made it more challenging with having a remote workforce. Employee wellness, of course, is pivotal and it's in the heart of everything. So all the employee processes have changed, whether it's acquiring early talent, whether it's acquiring lateral talents, whether it's onboarding employees, it's all the more difficult, right? It was easier in the past that when a new employee is joining, we get them on board, make them see our offices. But last couple of years and with the hybrid models, how do we really integrate the organization's culture in the employees who come with such a diverse background? And yet, they are literally like flying the plane and building it at the same time in a very new environment, very new culture. So I think, yeah, we don't have a magic wand. And the other thing which I also feel obligated as a HR leader in my organization is how do we really take our HR team members alongside? Because we are also human. So I think what we have seen over last couple of years is also being open about our own vulnerabilities, sharing transparently with the business, and to the point of business partnering, being a true business partner in sensitizing everyone in the organization about the common agendas, the common goals, and what we are all facing through, and then keeping that one goal and working towards it, how do we really keep the employees engaged? So I would say that the employee engagement has really gone way beyond how we managed everything in the past.
Thanks, Shamla. And as we can hear from our panelists, we already see so many different views, while the common thread is employee and the business and the customer over here. But the challenges that each one of us are facing is quite unique to us, right? And like I think Nitin had highlighted that point earlier. Now, when we look at all of this happening around us, and we spoke about digital transformation, and maybe Chavi, this is question I'll request from you, because you are in an industry which is at the forefront of technology, digital transformation when it comes to the customer side of things, right? Every day things are changing out there. How have you experienced it differently from an employee perspective? And how is it kind of, panning out for you, keeping the evolving needs of your various stakeholders in mind?
I don't know one way to answer this question, Anumay, I'm struggling. But I think just keeping in mind the fact that things are changing and shifting faster and in unpredictable ways. I think how do we listen a lot more than solve has become a very active skill that we are building. And I think there is no other way to say it. No simpler way to say it. I think what we as an organization are pivoting towards is more listening more to our customers, listening more to our employees as well. And this is where technology is playing such a beautiful part. I think it's allowing us the fact that I think hybrid has made it so easily accessible to just pick up, I think just dial in and talk and all of it versus just meeting. The kind of access that is allowed to using, I think AI has been very, very, I think heartening for us, especially from an employee centricity point of view. When we say continuous listening, we are literally listening continuously. There are questions that go out every month, every other month, depending upon, I think, the cohort that we are, I think, trying to listen to. And that is becoming, so it's not like an annual, customer survey or an annual employee survey. Every month there are metrics and conversations and I think actions being taken in terms of where is the employee sentiment at, where is the customer sentiment at. It starts with that first. Then the solutions come in. I think that's where I was coming from earlier in terms of, I think, then the ability for an organization to pivot and respond with that speed. If there is a changing sentiment, either on the customer or the employee lens, is something that we are learning, but I think we're learning beautifully. I'll give you a simple example of that. I think when, and I'll speak from the employee lens because that's closer to the work that I do, is when we started to think about bringing people back into, the workplace. I think the earlier sentiment was, I think, let's just open the doors, and I think make it like a Flipkart homecoming. But very quickly we realized that we need to listen. There were not enough data in the market because everybody was struggling with the fact that what are employees struggling? You could read newspaper reports, you could report reports from a PWC or any other, firm for that matter, but we never really know what are our employees feeling. So a simple survey, it may sound very simple, really, I think, shifted how we played the game. There were about 6,000 people who were supposed to come back into work. About 3,800 people responded to that survey, and that helped us decide that that we needed to take a staggered approach. That we needed to, I think, build a lot more inclusive benefits policies, that we needed to be a lot more sensitive to a certain section of employees, and the fact that we needed to rejig our workforce model in certain sections. Now, all this is logical and intuitive, but the fact that we use the employee sentiment and closed it out allowed a heightened sense of belonging, that the employee felt that I was heard and I was responded to. So using technology, using listening, and bringing solutions in the, that are contextual to that person was very, very important. So from a solutioning perspective, what we also did was we did a lot of conversational training to managers in terms of, I think, because cultures are formed at the micro level, rarely at the macro level. The people that I'm meeting every day is the identity that I experience in the organization. So we gave, we literally brought in conversational toolkits on how to build inclusion, on how to build the right mechanisms to set goal setting, performance, because hybrid is a very different setting than virtual. Right, I have been on both sides, and all of us have been, in terms of when I'm in the room versus I'm out of the room, how excluded or included I feel. So simple micro behaviors and shifting that is therefore the norm at a very basic level. At a macro level, I think what we are doing is really challenging our processes and systems. Does our performance management system really support the way the business is shaping? Does our compensation framework support? And we're constantly changing. So landing differentiated experiences, personal experiences, while responding to scale is the way we are responding to it right now. I'm not sure if I'm answering what you're asking for, Anumeha, but that's the way, at least we are thinking and approaching this. Yeah.
No, thanks for sharing that. I think you spoke about 2 or 3 very important levels in terms of that whole transformation that you're doing, how it's different, right? One is listening and how much you listen to the employees and how frequently you do that, almost like we do for our customers, right? And I think someone spoke about EX is equal to CX. So I think that's very important here. Second, I think you also spoke about and another important pillar as we drive some of this transformation, the culture piece, on how at micro and macro level you are kind of addressing that as an organization. And the third piece, and maybe we can deep dive a little more later, is the whole technology, how we are using technology as a bridge to drive that experience. And maybe, with that, I would now, just explore with Nitin that, Nitin, there are a lot of business transformation that's happening. And I think earlier you spoke about the role of HR, the elevated role of HR to support that. So how is it happening in your organization, and how are you keeping also the experience at the center of it as you are doing? So any learnings out there, any experiences that you want to share?
Sure, I hope you're asking me.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So I think starting everything from business, where for them everything starts from the customer, that is where the things changes. So instead of we coming up with solution, trying to push it to them, it's very necessary to partner with them in their problems and then find solutions that they are suggesting to work out, and then managing our workforce accordingly. So for example, in sales, if the customer is expecting more transparency in the pricing, customer is expecting more transparency in the turnaround time and how they would be delivered and all those things, and we go appoint a technology for the customer. But for the technology to run well, my sales team, my quality team, my customer service team, everybody needs to adhere to that new technology, new learning, and new ways of doing things. That's where the role of the HR starts coming in. And I think One of the things which is very, very critical, I don't know how many of you have it, for all the people who are listeners here, if your leaders, let's say MD or the CEO or you are business partner, they do not have their top strategies listed and one of the strategy listed as learning, then they are not making a full strategy for their business. Why do I say learning? Not because I come from a learning and development background. I say so because that's how the world has changed. You want to tell your people what's your vision. You want to tell your people how you're changing this big ship in a particular direction. You want to tell your people that go learn new technology, go learn SAP, software, Excel. Whatever you have to do, you have to use communication and training and learning to be able to make these fast changes and people adhering to you. And it is like everybody, a big army working together and moving together. And this may change. You may do something brilliantly now, but 3 months down the line, it may change. 6 months down the line, it may change. Have you made your people so strong on their capability of learning agility that they can change? It's not about solving a problem of business now. It's not about giving them a fish. It is about teaching them how to catch a fish. And slowly, they have to have the capabilities that HR had been possessing for so long. HR had been doing training and coaching. I need my business managers to do it now. I don't have time HR to do it. HR had been probably focusing on a lot of areas where areas of talent management, for example, that business has to do. HR can't do anything about it at this point in time because things have to change so fast and things like that. I hope, though I just joined again, I hope I'm able to answer your question and not deviated it.
No, you did. And thanks again, Nitin, for the HR experience part of it. I think the partnership part you spoke about that, we need to kind of co-create things along with the business and not kind of do it in isolation. I'll just take it, one level maybe further to say, and I'm sure that, you guys are doing it to say that also co-creating with the employees so that the mix has changed a little bit, right? Earlier, it would be your business and the HR and, the focus out the being there. But now employees expecting to be, be in the thick of things. They want to be involved and they want to be seen as, that their views are also being heard. And that's where the whole experience parts kind of, come together.
I think that has always been there. I'm a global master facilitator on change management, 12 years been training in different countries on that subject, on different topics, on different projects. Everywhere employee wanted them to be included when there's change happening. That's human psychology, not something that happened now.
Sure. So maybe, I think I'll kind of, Shamla, you spoke about earlier that how, different group companies within CK Birla, they have undergone a lot of transformation. And I know that, there is a lot of transformation happening in different group companies on the digital side. So how have you guys experienced it differently vis-a-vis how it was done earlier? And what were some of the learnings, let's say, in different group companies, the transformation, the way they shaped?
Sure, I think it's a journey, and I think it's been a very different experiences depending upon what kind of setups do we have. So if I really talk about the shop floor, and I think Anumeha, you spoke about, I really like the hopes and fears surveys because I was seeing the resonance and, what we have also experienced. So to the point that while technology is being perceived as something complementary, but there's a fear in the employees whether it's going to replace my role, especially on the shop floors or operations, which is a big manpower for us. So to Nitin's point, I think change management, multi-skilling, telling people how technology is here to help them rather than taking away their jobs and to help them find more meaningful work to do has been one of the agendas for our line leaders, I would say, facilitated by HR. So I think, again, to the point of co-creation, a big change is that, everyone is involved in that co-creation, including employees. And I think we strongly believe that we can never drive any transformation without having ownership, one, from the leaders as well as from the employees. So it's no longer a one-way process as it used to be once upon a time. Secondly, I think employee wellness. And again, I would reiterate that in some of the traditional setups where people were not used to remote or hybrid working, I think Again, that's a huge cultural transformation because now the whole world has gone remote and hybrid. So how do we really enable either attracting people, because I'm sure all of us agree, right? Probably 2 years back, the way people relocated, even from one city to another, leave aside countries. I mean, today people are happier picking up smaller jobs. They would let go of 100%, 50% raise and would be happy picking up a 20%. But they want to be in the same city because we've realized that there's a power of being closer home and closer to family. So, and hence it kind of shifts the behavior of relooking at the way we evaluate our jobs, relooking at the way we place our jobs, right? So we did a lot of that, you know, how in many of our group companies, and the plus is that, you know, we have presence all over. So probably one employee of another setup sitting from one location, the team is sitting in another location. So it's surely challenging. And then it poses a new challenge of how do you assimilate the teams together. So then comes the talent management part of assimilating the new leader with the team, which is in hybrid, and the related talent conversation challenges that come as a part of it. I can go on and on and on, and I think it's still a journey.
No, thanks, Shamla. Thanks for again sharing that. Maybe, you know, that brings me to the next part of the conversation that, you know, as we are going into implementing all of these solutions and, you know, playing right at the front foot. And maybe, you know, this question is, Anil, for you, that what are some of the paradoxes and challenges that you're seeing when you are trying to go ahead and implement this digital transformation or the workforce transformation in your organization?
No, thank you. I think it's a wonderful question because once the pandemic set in, this was one train of thought I was having, saying, hey, we're dealing with a wicked problem here. It's not a complex or a complicated problem. We're dealing with a wicked problem, and the problem with wicked problems is there are a lot of paradoxes. So I did some research around this whole subject of paradoxical leadership, and then just in early days of pandemic, Agnish was one of those HR influencers globally, published an article called "After the Shock: Phases of Crisis." And in his article, there was a small segment on paradoxes. So I reached out to him, borrowed some of this stuff, and rolled out a survey which around 150 leaders in 9 countries responded. So I'll quickly sum it up because there's some interesting. First, some list of paradoxes which I think which we hear every day. Care of the individual versus attend to the organization. Focus on status quo, create a new path. Converge for focus, diverge for variety. Hold short-term goals versus enduring long-term values. Build to last, build to adapt. Focus on customer versus focus on efficiencies. Resilience, learn from the past. Aspiration, celebrate the future. Focus on stability, focus on agility, and there are many more. So kind of shortlisted. What was interesting was when I rolled out this survey couple of months into the pandemic, the top 3 which came up was care of individual versus attend to the organization was ranked number 1. The second one is bold short-term goals versus enduring long-term values from an organization perspective. And third is focus on stability versus focus on agility. And if you rolled out survey sometime now, or even did a poll to this group or others, maybe we will get similar results, or the paradoxes would shuffle. But what's important is to understand the inherent nature of a paradox is either they're two conflicting sides to a topic, or they're seemingly conflicting. So essentially, the way I kind of cognitively assimilated from this research was to say, hey, what our leaders need, HR leaders, business leaders need is this meta skill, like a lifelong skill about dealing with paradox, and it's called paradoxical leadership. So do you have the ability to be comfortable to look at 2 opposite sides of a point of view and still find a common ground and see, is the conflict real or is the conflict apparent, not so real? For a simple example, which most of us would have faced is, your CFO has a point of view and your CEO has a point of view, and you're right here as a CHR or HR or a talent leader trying to make sense of both of them. So first, how can we deal with paradoxes? And then how can we actually teach this skill to the organization as leaders, so on and so forth. So that was the train of thought. So I think helping people have this critical thinking to deal with paradoxes starts with something as simple as generative thinking, and we all in facilitation would have done this saying, hey, don't say no, say yes and, right? And then, and then HR playing a big role of facilitating conversations. Again, listening, we heard a lot about listening, but facilitating conversations where paradoxical topics are coming up. So that's like some bit of research. And what it meant for FIS was how we responded to the paradoxes we're dealing was we ended up having 5 strategic priorities for the organization from a HR perspective, from the HR organization. One is focus on new ways of working for our employees, transformational leadership, building transformational leadership so the leaders can drive the organization based on paradoxical thinking, so on and so forth. Interestingly, career experience and skills of the future. Again, experience is coming up here. Ensuring the career, we give the right career experience and relevant career experience going forward to our employees. Third one, fourth, digital experience, again, based on experience. And fourth is being a global employer of choice, again, experience and employer branding being a big one. What I would like to quickly sum up is a very interesting quote by Niels Bohr. He's a Nobel Prize winner in physics. And, he says, how wonderful that we have met with a paradox. Now we can have some hope for making progress. So on that note, I'll pass it back to you.
Thanks, Anil. And I can clearly see your passion for the paradoxes. In fact, interestingly, and maybe not for today's panel, but PWC has done this research which talks about 6 paradoxes of the leadership. So clearly, we are living in an era wherein we are dealing with a lot of paradoxes. And first of all, acknowledging that, appreciating that it's going to exist, and then building the entire organization and leadership capability to be able to deal with paradoxes is what I take away from what you just summarized for us. On that note, maybe Ravi and Deepak, to you, how is this manifesting in your organization, and how are you experiencing some of those challenges?
I'll take it. Yeah, so see, most of the paradoxes, like Nitin also said, is either it's a question of real versus non-real, and the second one is whether it's a long-term or the short-term. So if you broadly classify all the paradoxes, it will either fall under short-term or long-term or real and non-real. So now how do we deal with that thing? Is that because this is the challenges that we face on the day-to-day basis, and we need to first accept, yes, these are challenges, and once we accept the challenges, then we see that what are the opportunities out of these challenges. Like, for example, we have to be very flexible, very agile at this moment, because we can't have a 5-year strategy and then we don't know what is going to happen in the next month or so. So we need to be quite agile and quite flexible in that and adaptive. Now, HR plays a very great role in making it flexible, because whatever the business decision you take or business model you change or whatever the changes that you do, it has to be percolated to the last level of the change. Like that last person should know why we are doing the change and how we are doing the change. Now, to bring that, HR can't do it alone. HR has to be business partnering with every function in the organization to percolate down this chain. But like, for example, now you can distribute the change. Like, for example, if you're working in a virtual environment, you have to have the IT capability, IT support with you to get the transformation driven. You have the virtual transformation, virtual training, virtual skilling, reskilling, making the people aware of the things, that why we are doing certain things and what we are doing when we are doing certain things. So HR tries these transformation initiatives. Employee well-being is something which we have all spoken about during this pandemic and during post-pandemic as well. It continues to be a very, very important part of our, from the HR journey point of view, how we do these employee well-being initiatives, how we conduct these well-being initiatives across the organization. HR business partnering, as I have been mentioning, it becomes a critical element of it. Transformation through digital initiatives, like people have that fear, like whether I lose a job because of the digitization initiatives. Now, how do we translate saying that there was a survey from Gartner wherein one of the surveys was that the people feel that the risk of the when we implement this any technological initiatives that we do, there is a risk that could affect their jobs. But 64% of the people in the same survey also said the fact, saying that tech is more of an opportunity than a risk. I think the same survey had two facets. One was saying that yes, there is a risk in the job. The second was saying that yes, there is also more opportunity than the risk. So, in a nutshell, overall, if you say business enablement, tech is 100% that tech has to be there. And how do you communication as a from the top level to the down level? Has the communication has to be seamless and very fair and transparent.
Thanks for sharing that, Deepak.
Yes, I'm going to take a slightly different analogy. I don't know whether it's a paradox. If I had to lose weight, do I exercise or do I diet? It's always a challenge that people face. And I think what we end up doing is based on what is our strength. I like to get up in the morning and like go for a walk. I might do exercise as an option rather than diet. Somebody else may say, no, I can't get up, but I would like to diet. Now, a similar thing is happening in Hangyo. I found that my line managers were already taking ownership. They were talking to customers. They are coming back to the management with what is required by the customer. So that was a lot of agility. Internal communication was very good. In such an environment, trying to force a different type of change was not would not have made sense. So what we decided is we said there is no HR. The line manager is HR. So we adopted them and said the HR department is only a facilitator. Tell me what you want me to do, and we will enable that to happen. And that's how we started listening, because that was the culture there. They listen, they talk to each other very quickly. Now in this culture, I think therefore what was right to do was, rather than having a huge change management sort of exercise, was create these small change initiatives to make it happen from bottom up to top down very quickly. And I think that sort of a culture is what we are trying to encourage in Hangyo to happen. Because as I said, agility is their strength. Communication is their strength. Now, these two things, in my previous organization, it was a difficult thing to happen, make it happen. Now, this already exists. Now, why should I destroy that? And as HR, we tend to come up with a lot of policies, procedures, and then make it more complicated. And then we try to simplify it. I said, I don't think that is necessary here. Let us use the strengths of the organization to make the change that is required in this current context, which is there. Yes, the company is gearing for growth, very fast growth. It is focusing on capturing market share in the areas that they are operating. This is the management view of the top-down view. How do I make my same team adapt that and work fast, and which methodology they would like to use? Instead of having a top-down approach, we decided to have a bottom-up listening style, and then using some of the tips that we get from them to go back and implement. I think that's the sort of change in whatever management style you would like to ask me. I said I don't want to be the head of HR in that sense. I would rather be an HR facilitator in this organization.
Thanks, and very interesting perspective you shared here, Deepak, because we're talking about using the existing muscles that we have. Well, there is a huge focus that organizations have on building new muscles, which is also going to be essential because some of that, will eventually happen. But I think leveraging the existing strengths in the muscle is, what my key takeaway is. And the second point that you mentioned that, it's not about the role that you're sitting at, it's about the role you're performing, which is of that facilitator, of that integrator for the business. No, thanks for sharing that. Probably, I'll ask my last question from the panelists before we open it up for the questions. So, in light of all these discussions that we've had, if there is, one shift that you will share for yourself and the organization from an HR perspective, what would that be? And I'm just focusing on one shift because that's the shift that we are all looking at and making happen in our organizations. So maybe we can go in any order, but we can start from Anil, maybe you, and then Chavi, Deepak.
Sure. I think I'll keep it short. I think if it's one shift, I think if all organizations need to build business agility, which means HR needs to be agile, and we need to really, not just talk about it, but implement all the practices of agile and become truly agile. And, in the entire Agile school of thought, there is a separate body of knowledge around Agile HR. It has 6 tenets. I'm not going to those, but essentially becoming a truly Agile organization as HR would help us drive the whole organization to create business agility. That would be my take.
Sure. Chavi?
I think I'll probably speak the exact opposite. I think HR as a facilitator, I think the shift has to actually happen with HR. I think the same acuity with which business looks as customers and market, HR needs to look at talent and business impact. I think calling ourselves facilitators is a disservice to ourselves as a function. I think we are, and we should be people business deeply, who understand talent market deeply, how to carry the subject matter expertise to bring in contextual to the emerging trends and shape the language of the organization in which they interact within the organization and outside. And I think I've been talking about this to my team very lately in terms of, I think if you were to whatever service or product that you're providing, will somebody buy it if we were not to be working for Flipkart? That's how you should look at your work. Because I think the same excellence and drive that which business drives for profitability, HR needs to measure itself in terms of, I think, both employee engagement, productivity, and impact. That's the shift we need to make as HR.
Thanks. It was a very interesting perspective, and we can already see paradoxes over here as well. And I think that's very healthy.
What you're saying.
Am I audible? Okay, so I am probably. So yeah, I was saying, Chavi, very interesting perspective, and we can already see that that there are different thoughts and the different school of thoughts depending on where the organizational journey is. Probably let's listen to Deepak and then Nitin to you.
Yes, well, I agree with Chavi that we have a role to play. I mean, I'm not denying that fact, but how we present ourselves and get the line managers to lead and deliver on the expectation that we have from them is the game. And as I said, it is also dependent on the organization size and complexity that you have and the culture that is existing in the organization that you have. So for me, as I said, it is a learning that I'm going through myself when I came to Hungary. A small organization with a very clear family work culture, very agile decision-making process, great empowerment where people were able to take their decisions and implement very quickly. All these things were something that we were struggling to make it happen in a large organization of the previous, in my previous engagement. So I see that as a strength of this organization and I want to make that. Does that mean I don't have challenges? Oh, there are a lot of people challenges that are involved. As I said, some of the attrition that we had were more because of career development. Now, who is listening to these employees who are looking for career growth? At least HR has to listen to it and make that facilitation to happen. Now, it's easy to say career development to provide the system, provide the entire platform around which it can to make it happen is something that we need to work on over a period of time. So listening is a continuous process that has to be there, and enabling systems, creating enabling systems is also there. Digitizing is no doubt. HR processes need to continuously digitize, otherwise we would be doing disservice to the future generation, which is likely to come into this organization and expecting a digital workplace. Having said that, we cannot digitize human emotions. We cannot digitize human touch. I think that part is something that we cannot forget. And that if our managers already are performing very clearly, fighting for their employees, talking to HR about somebody's promotion, somebody's salary increase, somebody's requirement on a personal front, etc., I should appreciate it. I should not say that, oh, I have a policy which is trying to say no to this or yes to this and so on. And I think that's where the balancing act is taking place. And hence the initial, my take, because I'm in Hungary for the last 6 months, my initial take to them was that I would like to look at not a man who has come down to bring his massive changes, but use the strengths of this organization to bring in the change as we go forward. That's how I looked at it when I said it as I'm a facilitator.
Sure. Well, thanks, Deepak. Thanks for sharing that. And probably we'll listen to Nitin next. I'm also cognizant of time, and there are a couple of very interesting questions that I see from the audience. So I don't want to miss out on the opportunity for panelists to respond to those. So Nitin, over to you.
Sure. So I get the message that I have to be really short.
No, but do you get the message that you have to take on the panel question now, Nitin?
Yes, I'm kidding. I'm just kidding. Yeah. So I think I want to say just one thing, one recommendation for all of you. But unfortunately, for you to take my recommendation, it is very important that you have to shed off your biases and previous education experience and belief system. Human beings are very dynamic. They are dynamic organisms who are changing every day. And pandemic has changed it. We used to believe that change is difficult. Change is easy, provided it comes with some asterisk signs. You don't have a choice. Change is easy. And probably today we can reflect back. If my people are not doing something and not accepting a change, I can easily say, hey, you did it then. What happened? Why can't you do it now? So that human beings in your organizations know they're capable of doing anything. So my recommendation and one recommendation to you as an HR is change the DNA of your organization and your people's thinking and turn it to a growth mindset. Today, if you go and tell your people, hey, I'm shifting XYZ people to Falana department or doing something major change, they should come to you and say, oh, I'm excited. You changed my role 6 months ago. Again, you're changing it. I'm very excited. People are coming to you talking about how HR is not giving us career. It's not HR's problem to give a career. They should be thinking about themselves. They should own their career. They should own their learning. Business coming to you saying, hey, HR is not making a succession better in our company. That is not HR responsibility. HR is there to facilitate. It is business responsibility to manage succession. Everywhere you have to change the mindset of every single employee that everything that is happening is so amazingly good for their growth and organization growth that there's no crying over to happen. And when that is the culture you've maintained, you will see that when you throw challenges to them, they're not coming back to you with problems and why things can't be done. Rather, they know you won't listen. You will only listen how they are accepting it, how they are making it beautiful. And that's how the world look like from now on. And if you change as an HR, they will change as the people. Over to you, Anumeya.
Well, thanks. And I think you spoke about growth mindset, very important as we kind of build the organizations and, we help people tell that, failures are okay. There's a lot of opportunity that's for everyone and, being able to see those opportunities. And probably, I would have loved to have a longer conversation on that. But I think the next question that has come from the panel is so interesting. So Ravi, over to you. And then maybe if it's okay, I'll open up for the panel.
Sure, I'll just keep it very, very short. I believe, so we are in the digital era and we need to be a data-driven HR, like data-driven analytical HR. A lot of analytics will help us to drive the business functions or business decisions quite faster and quite effectively. So business-driven, tech-driven, data-driven HR.
Thanks. That was really short and very crisp, Ravi. Shamla, over to you for your quick thoughts.
I think Ravi read my mind. I would have said humane digital organization backed by analytics. So I'll keep it short and crisp, Anumeya.
Thank you so much. And, now I will maybe open the question that has come in from the, panel out there, audience. And I think anyone who wants to kind of take, could respond to this. So the question that has come in is that you're talking about, all this digital, workplace and hybrid workplace. How are we ensuring psychological safety? How are we ensuring and nurturing psychological safety in the whole hybrid work environment? And anyone who wants to take that question and respond from the panel.
I'm happy to start.
Sure.
So I think one shift that we have done in order to maintain psychological safety of people is engaging with a lot of third-party partners. So bringing neutral firms to support our employees, whether it's on employee assistance programs, whether it's on stay interviews, whether it's on exit interviews, any of the processes, because we were very keen to have very objective feedback. So that is one side of it. And then I think to some of us who mentioned listening, I think listening to the extent that at some point people started feeling survey fatigued. I'm sure we have echoed that. But I think just short, crisp surveys time and again to check, and especially with remote people, or picking up the phones and just checking, so those were the basic things. But I think what we learned in those 2 years of pandemic was how do we really get back to basics, get back to roots, and at the same time ensure that people are feeling safe and protected. And therefore this whole piece of EAP anonymity and things were brought in. So that's what I would say, a little bit of what we did.
Sure. Anyone wants to add to that?
I'll just add a bit to that. Just to give an example, what we did. So we all have that fatigue coming in because of Zoom and Zoom meetings going on, all the virtual meetings going on. And we used to conduct an event called as PlaySport, which was actually an outdoor event, having the indoor plus outdoor games. And it used to be a physical event which we used to conduct pre-pandemic, wherein it used to be a platform for cross-functional bonding, team bonding within the team. So it used to be a great platform for us. But for 2 years, we could not conduct the do the event. So this year we thought, let's do it virtually. And we did a virtual event. We were not sure of how the people will take it, whether it is going to be a success, how the people are going to take it, because we are going to do it virtually. But it became such an unanticipated success. People all were talking about it. So I'm saying, while we are driving the wellness initiatives, while we are driving those talks, health talks, doctor consultation, and all these things, these small elements definitely help on the moral side of the people.
Sure. Probably we can take one more response from one of the panelists.
I think I'll just reiterate what I shared earlier is something. I think culture is shaped in micro spaces, not in macro spaces. I think if I feel safe, it is because of the interactions that I have at work and the kind of experiences I have at work. So we've looked at it from three lenses largely in terms of, I think, what are the processes, and I think somebody mentioned earlier on, I think, what are experience points in the organization, whether it is benefits or whether it is hiring, whether it's onboarding, how do we kind of both sense and respond, I think, a lot more quickly. Two, I think is, I think, creating simple frameworks on how to hold conversations, because a lot of times what is easier in a friend space, for example, we don't even think, in terms of asking or pushing or provoking. Sometimes I think in the organization, because we always feel like we are being watched from a performance lens or from a potential lens, can I ask, do I have the permission to be who I am? I think creating that safety, I think we've done in terms of ensuring that managers are equipped to create that space. Two is, I think, larger, I think, platforms which we call Ask Me Anything. I think so people can go to Glassdoor and paste that, or they can actually ask to the leaders directly here. And I think the kind of questions that asked, I think we can't even publish them out of that forum sometimes. They are embarrassing, provocative questions that get asked. And the fact that that space is created allows us to respond to it, because a lot of those psychological safety elements come from the fact that people are feeling, either they're feeling afraid of something, or they're feeling shameful of something, or they're experiencing something that is disrespectful. Largely these three elements. And if there is a space for them to voice it out, and there is a closure element to that, it creates that. So micro pieces with managers, macro pieces with I think very open platforms where people can just come in and ask in anything.
Right. I think it's
I'll just add, I think she said the closure piece, because our speed to action after we do the listening bit and getting to know the issue, the important thing is then act. So if you can act fast, I think that gives the psychological safety a good confidence that yes, the company is addressing the need of the employee.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I think it's a very important, topic which is getting discussed, especially more so with the, again, hybrid environment. And I think deep-rooted somewhere, things like inclusion, I think, Shavi, you spoke about it, you alluded to that point. how are we creating that net, psychological safety net, wherein I can go and speak up as an employee without fear for any action, punitive action, and also be open. And it kind of stems to, again, multiple layers and levels, in different organizations. So a very interesting question. I know that, we would have wanted to kind of discuss a few more things, but it was such a nice thing hearing different perspectives from this panel. Some very interesting thoughts, some paradoxical thoughts as well, which also speaks about the fact that we are not generalizing things, so we are not getting into that mindset of one size fits all as a community. So again, very important. Thank you so much for your participation. And I would now pass on to Mr. Kamath or Shaju for any closing remarks.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for today's. The program was fantastic. And as usual, we used to have every session on with the PWC used to be very intense, and the industry representation used to be very productive also. So, we are keep on with the trend that this one also was extremely good. And I would like to extend a vote of thanks to all the panelists who have taken time and joined for this and wholeheartedly put their thought process into this discussion. It was a great discussion which has happened, and this will be on YouTube also, on the FICCI platform. This will be many people who are not able to join today also can see it at a later stage also. So I would like to thank all PWC. I would like to thank all the panelists and everybody for joining today's program. And we can close now. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thanks, everyone. Have a great rest of the evening.
Thank
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.